The chandelier light of l'Olivier fell like liquid gold across the tables, catching the shimmer of champagne glasses and the glint of diamond bracelets. Every sound, the soft clink of silverware, the low murmur of power conversations, carried a sense of privilege. For Emily Hartman, 24, it was just another night behind the apron. She moved through the dining room like a ghost in black and white, balancing plates worth more than her weekly paycheck. Her shoes pinched, her smile was practiced, and the ache in her back had become a second heartbeat. None of it mattered. Rent was due in 3 days, and her mother's medicine was running out again. "Table 12, please," her manager whispered. "The VIP just arrived. Don't screw this one up." Emily grabbed her notepad and turned toward the far corner booth, the one reserved for the kind of people who didn't wait for tables. Tables waited for them. A man sat there alone. He wasn't the loud, entitled type she usually served. He radiated stillness, the kind that came from authority so deep it didn't need to announce itself. His suit was tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been poured onto him. His hair, dark at the roots and silvering at the edges, framed a face that could have been carved from stone. His eyes, icy blue, assessing, lifted briefly when she approached. "Good evening, sir," Emily began softly. "May I get you something to drink?" "Just sparkling water," he said without looking up. His voice was low, refined, and final. She nodded, stepping away. But something about him caught her breath. The sharp line of his jaw, the faint scar near his right eyebrow. It felt hauntingly familiar. When she returned with the water, he was scrolling through photos on his phone, his expression unreadable. He swiped to one and froze. His thumb lingered on the screen, and for a brief second Emily saw it, the image that would unravel everything. 2 babies, twins, wrapped in white hospital blankets, both with the same dark hair and small birthmark on their necks, just like hers. Her tray trembled. The glass rattled. He looked up. "Something wrong?" Emily blinked hard. "No, sir. I'm fine." She turned quickly, her pulse hammering in her ears. What were the odds? The photo couldn't mean what she thought it did. She must have imagined it. Behind her, she could still feel his gaze following her every move, cool and unyielding. At the bar, her co-worker Sam noticed her pale face. "You okay, Em? You look like you just saw a ghost." She swallowed. "Maybe I did." The rest of the shift passed in fragments. Orders, trays, polite smiles. But Emily's thoughts never left that photograph. The man's face lingered in her mind, and with it, the gnawing memory of her mother's half-truths. All her life, she'd been told she was an only child. But there had been times, small, strange moments, when her mother would stare at her too long, eyes glistening, as if seeing someone else in her place. Nafuskan. When the night finally ended, Emily stood outside the restaurant, the city wind cutting through her thin coat. She replayed every detail in her mind. The scar, the eyes, the babies in the photo. She didn't know who that man was, but something deep inside whispered that her life, every story she'd ever believed, was about to collapse. And at that very moment, inside his car, the man was staring at the same photo, whispering a single name he hadn't said in 20 years. Nathan. The city outside was merciless. Neon lights bled into puddles, sirens screamed somewhere far away, and the night smelled of rain and hot concrete. Emily pulled her coat tighter and started the long walk home from l'Olivier. Every step echoed the same thought that had haunted her since she saw that picture. Why did those babies look like me? Her phone buzzed. A reminder. Mum's meds. Pick up tomorrow. Balance, 320 oils. She exhaled a shaky laugh. Yeah, right. By the time she reached her apartment in Queens, her legs ached and her mind was spinning. The hallway smelled like damp paint and someone's burnt toast. Apartment 4B, their little world. She unlocked the door quietly. The lights inside were dim, except for the glow of the TV, playing an old sitcom. Her mother, Ruth Hartman, sat curled under a blanket on the couch, pale and small, like she was fading into the fabric. "Hey, sweetheart," Ruth said weakly. "You're late tonight." Emily dropped her bag on the floor and forced a smile. "Gala night. Rich people don't believe in sleep." She sat beside her mother, brushing a strand of graying hair from her face. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," Ruth lied. She always lied. Her hands trembled as she lifted a mug of cold tea. "Did you eat?" "I grabbed something at work," Emily said automatically. It wasn't true. She hadn't eaten since noon. For a moment, they sat in silence. The TV laugh track echoed hollowly around the room. Emily studied her mother's face, the deep lines, the quiet sadness behind every smile. "Mom," she said finally, "did I ever have a brother?" Ruth froze. The mug in her hand rattled. Her eyes darted toward Emily, wide and frightened. "What kind of question is that?" "I don't know." Emily shrugged, pretending it was casual. "I just had this weird dream last night. 2 babies. Twins." Ruth's lips pressed into a thin line. "Dreams are strange like that." Emily nodded slowly, but inside something twisted. The lie was too quick, too smooth. She'd seen the same thing in rude customers at work, people trying to hide something. "I should get some sleep," Ruth said suddenly, standing up a little too fast. "You've got another long shift tomorrow." She kissed Emily's forehead and shuffled to her bedroom. The door clicked shut behind her. Emily sat there, staring at the flickering TV. Her chest ached with a confusion she couldn't name. There was something her mother wasn't telling her. Something big. Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked Central Park, Nicholas Grant poured himself a glass of scotch. He sat in silence, staring at his phone, the same picture still glowing on the screen. 2 newborns. His mother's handwriting on the back. "Nicholas and Nathan, my boys." He traced the faces with his thumb. "You'd be 24 now," he murmured. "If you'd lived." A sharp knock on the door broke his trance. His assistant, Marcus, stepped in. "Sir, the board meeting is confirmed for 9 a.m. tomorrow." Nicholas nodded absently. "Cancel it." "Cancel it?" Marcus blinked. "Sir, that's—" "I said cancel it." His tone was quiet but final. "I need to find out who that girl was." Marcus hesitated. "The waitress? You think she's connected?" Nicholas's jaw tightened. "She has my brother's face." He looked out the window at the glittering skyline below, his reflection faint in the glass. Haunted, older, lonelier than he remembered. Far away, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Scrolling through the name, Grant Foundation, she'd just Googled. And for the first time in her life, she whispered a question that would soon rewrite everything she knew. Who am I, really? The next morning came slow and grey. Rain pressed against the window like it wanted in. Emily woke up to the sound of her mother coughing in the next room, a deep, dry cough that made her heart twist. She brewed instant coffee, the cheap kind that smelled more like cardboard than caffeine, and tried not to think about the man from last night. But she couldn't help it. His eyes, that picture, those 2 babies. It wasn't just coincidence. It couldn't be. Her mother emerged from her room wrapped in a faded robe. "Morning, honey," she said, her voice hoarse. "Morning." Emily handed her the mug. "You should rest. The weather's bad again." Ruth gave a tired smile. "If I rested any more, I'd turn into the couch." Emily tried to laugh, but her stomach felt tight. She hesitated before speaking. "Mom, where are the old photos? The ones from before I was born?" Ruth's hand froze halfway to her lips. "Why?" "I just wanted to see them. For the restaurant's anniversary, they're doing some kind of family photo wall. I thought it'd be fun." Ruth stared at her for a long second, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Then, with a sigh, she pointed toward the hallway closet. "Top shelf. In the shoebox." Emily retrieved the box, dust clouding the air as she lifted the lid. Inside were random pieces of a life, movie ticket stubs, faded Polaroids, an old baby blanket. Her hands trembled as she sifted through them until one photo made her breath catch. A woman in her 20s, her mother, younger, glowing with happiness, held two tiny babies swaddled in identical white cloths. The corner of the picture was torn, the edge frayed where another hand must have been holding it once. Emily turned it over. Written faintly in blue ink were the words, "My angels, together forever." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She stared at her mother. "Who are they?" Ruth's face went pale. "Emily, put that away." "Mom," Emily said softly, "there are two babies in this photo." Ruth reached for the picture, but Emily pulled it back. "You have to tell me, did I have a brother?" For a moment, Ruth looked like she might scream, then collapse. Instead, she sank into a chair, her eyes distant. "It was so long ago," she whispered. "You were so small. You were both so small." Emily's voice cracked. "Both?" Tears welled in Ruth's eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. There was a fire at the hospital. Panic. Confusion. They told me one of you didn't make it. I didn't even get to hold him again." Emily's chest ached. "You're saying I had a twin, and you never told me?" Ruth pressed a trembling hand to her face. "Because I couldn't. Every time I tried, it felt like losing him all over again." Emily stood there, clutching the photo, the ground beneath her tilting. "What was his name?" Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. "Nathan." The name hit her like thunder. She thought of the man at l'Olivier, the photo on his phone. Two babies labeled Nicholas and Nathan Grant. She didn't say a word. She just stared at her mother, realizing that everything, every lullaby, every story, every lie, was built on a secret grave. "I need to know the truth," Emily said quietly. Ruth reached for her, but Emily stepped back, her voice breaking. "I'm not angry. I just need to know who I am." Outside, thunder rolled, and in that instant, Emily made a silent promise. She would find out what happened to Nathan Grant, no matter what it cost her. 2 days passed, but sleep never really came. Emily's mind kept circling the same image. Her mother holding two babies, the handwriting on the back, the name Nathan. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the billionaire's face and the photo on his phone. By the third night, she couldn't stand it any more. She sat at her small kitchen table, the shoebox open in front of her, the photo lying under a single flickering bulb. Her phone screen glowed with the search results for Nicholas Grant. There he was, billionaire CEO of Grant International, tech, real estate, philanthropy. Headlines with his face stared back at her. The most private man in America. The resemblance between him and her, same jawline, same eyes, made her stomach twist. She whispered to herself, "What if he's Nathan?" But how could she even prove that? Walk up to him again? He'd already looked at her like she was crazy. A sharp knock on the door startled her. She quickly hid the photo as her landlord's voice came muffled through the wood. "Rent's late again, Emily." She opened the door halfway. "I know, Mr. DeMarco, I just need another week." He sighed. 1 week. After that, I can't hold it anymore." When he left, Emily shut the door and leaned her forehead against it. She needed money, sleep, and the truth. In that order. The next morning, she returned to l'Olivier. It felt strange walking through those glass doors again. Her manager, Dana, spotted her and frowned. "You're early?" Emily forced a smile. "Just wanted to pick up an extra shift." "You sure? The VIP table's booked again tonight. Same guy as last week. The one who gave you that look." Emily's heart skipped. "Nicholas Grant?" Dana raised a brow. "You know him?" "Just heard the name." By 7, the restaurant glowed under amber light, filled with the clinking of wine glasses and soft jazz. Emily tried to stay calm. but every time she looked toward the corner booth, he was there. Perfect posture, unreadable expression, a storm behind his eyes. When she finally approached, he looked up. "You again," he said evenly. "Yes, sir. Welcome back." "I didn't request you." Her throat tightened. "I know. I'm just covering the section." He studied her for a moment before speaking. "What's your name?" "Emily." "Emily what?" "Hartman." He repeated it quietly, like testing the sound. "Hartman." He leaned back. "You looked shaken the other night. Did I offend you somehow?" She hesitated. "No, sir. You didn't." But her eyes betrayed her. He caught the flicker of fear, or was it recognition? And something changed in his face. He took a small card from his jacket pocket, sliding it toward her. "Come to this address tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. Emily frowned. "Why?" "Because you're not telling me something," he said simply. "And I need to know what." Her heart pounded. "Is this some kind of interview?" "Nothing more." He stood, dropping $100 bill on the table. "You can keep the change." He left without another word, his reflection vanishing into the mirrored wall. Emily stared at the card. It was embossed in gold. Grant International Headquarters, Midtown Tower. She didn't notice her hands shaking until Dana came up behind her. "What did he say?" Emily swallowed hard. "He wants to see me. Tomorrow." Dana blinked. "You sure that's smart?" Emily looked down at the card, her reflection trembling in the golden surface. "No," she said quietly. "But I think it's the only way I'll ever get answers." Outside, the rain started again, tapping against the windows like an impatient clock counting down to morning. The next morning, Manhattan was a blur of umbrellas and yellow cabs cutting through wet streets. Emily clutched the card Nicholas had given her, its edges slightly bent from being held too tightly. Grant International Headquarters towered above her like something out of a dream. Glass, steel, and money. The kind of building that made people like her feel like ghosts. Inside, everything gleamed. The marble floors were spotless, the air smelled faintly of jasmine, and the people, perfectly dressed, moving with purpose, looked like they belonged to another species. Emily approached the reception desk, heart racing. "Hi," she said softly. "I have an appointment with Mr. Grant. 10 o'clock. The receptionist, a polished woman with an icy smile, looked her up and down. "Name?" "Emily Hartman." Her manicured fingers typed something. Then she frowned. "I'm sorry, there's no meeting scheduled for that name." Emily blinked. He told me to come." She pulled out the card. "Oh, he gave me this himself." The woman's smile didn't falter. "Ma'am, this office doesn't allow unverified visitors. You'll have to leave." Before Emily could respond, a familiar voice cut through the lobby. "It's fine, Clara. She's with me." Nicholas Grant stood at the base of the grand staircase, flanked by two men in suits. Every conversation in the lobby seemed to pause. His presence carried weight, cold, commanding, magnetic. "Come," he said. Emily followed him through glass doors into a private elevator. The air inside was so silent, she could hear her own pulse. Nicholas pressed the button for the top floor. "You didn't tell me the truth last night." "I didn't know what to say," Emily replied, her voice trembling. "You're not exactly easy to talk to." His lips curved slightly, but not in humor. "So talk now." "I saw that photo," she blurted. "The one on your phone. The twins. I think I'm one of them." Nicholas's eyes flicked toward her, sharp as glass. "You think? My mother had the same picture, the same babies, except she tore half of it off." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. They stepped into a vast office lined with windows overlooking the skyline. At the far end stood a long conference table, and half a dozen executives seated around it. Nicholas didn't stop walking. "You said you wanted answers, Miss Hartman. Let's get them." He gestured toward the head of the table. "Sit." Emily hesitated. The men in suits exchanged looks. One of them, grey hair, expensive watch, leaned toward Nicholas. "Sir, this isn't appropriate. We have shareholders waiting." Nicholas ignored him. Tell them this is more important. Emily sank into the chair, her hands clasped in her lap. The walls felt like they were closing in. Nicholas turned to his assistant. Marcus, bring me the file from the archives, 1998, Grant Memorial Hospital, birth records. Marcus stiffened. Sir, those files are confidential. Do it. Marcus left reluctantly. The tension in the room grew thick. One of the executives muttered, This is absurd. We can't waste time entertaining delusions from a waitress. Nicholas's voice cut like a blade. Watch your tone. But the damage was done. Emily felt 100 eyes on her, judging, dissecting. Someone whispered the word waitress again, and laughter rippled around the table. Her face burned. She rose from her seat. You know what? Forget it. I shouldn't have come. Nicholas's expression faltered for the first time. Emily, wait. She turned on her heel and stormed toward the elevator, her vision blurring. The whispers followed her like claws. As the doors closed, she heard one of the men say, She's just another gold digger, sir. Emily pressed her hand against her chest, trying to breathe. She didn't see Nicholas's jaw tighten or the way he slammed his fist on the table hard enough to make the glasses shake. Because deep down, something told him they were wrong, and he was about to find out why. The elevator doors slid open to the ground floor, and Emily walked out with her heart in her throat. The lobby was a blur of movement. People in suits, security guards, the clicking rhythm of high heels on marble. But she didn't see any of it. Her vision tunneled, her breath short and sharp. Outside, the rain had returned. Soft, but relentless. She stepped into it without an umbrella, the cold drops soaking through her thin coat. The humiliation still burned in her chest, the way they'd laughed, the way they'd said waitress like it meant worthless. She turned the corner onto Fifth Avenue and stopped under an awning, trying to catch her breath. Her reflection stared back at her in a boutique window. Tired eyes, smudged mascara, and that haunted look she barely recognized. What were you thinking, Emily? She whispered to herself. You don't belong in their world. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dana, her manager. He called, said not to come in tonight, said you're suspended until further notice. Her stomach dropped. Of course, she muttered bitterly. Perfect timing. Somewhere miles above her, in that glass tower, Nicholas Grant stood by his office window, watching the rain. Marcus entered quietly, a thick manila folder in his hands. Sir, Marcus said carefully, I found what you asked for. The hospital records. Nicholas turned, his expression unreadable. And? Marcus hesitated. There was a twin birth at Grant Memorial Hospital in 1998. Male and female. The male child, Nathan Grant, was reported deceased after a fire in the neonatal ward. The mother's name was Helen Grant. But the female infant was never listed. Nicholas frowned. Never listed? Marcus cleared his throat. According to the nurse's log, the records were sealed, and shortly after one nurse resigned, Ruth Hartman. Nicholas froze. Hartman? Yes. The same last name as the girl. For a long moment, the room was silent, except for the ticking of the rain against the glass. Then Nicholas said quietly, Find her. Marcus shifted uneasily. Sir, with respect, this could destroy everything. The board already thinks you've lost focus. If this goes public, find her, Nicholas repeated, his tone like steel. And bring me proof. Marcus nodded reluctantly and left the room. Back in Queens, Emily sat on her couch, knees drawn to her chest. Her mother's cough echoed faintly from the bedroom. The shoebox sat open on the coffee table again, the torn photograph lying on top. She stared at it until her eyes blurred. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Why did you keep him from me? A sudden knock startled her. She wiped her eyes and opened the door. A tall man in a dark coat stood there, rain dripping from his shoulders. Emily Hartman? Yes? He handed her a sealed envelope. From Mr. Grant. Her stomach knotted as she tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small silver key. The note read, "You deserve the truth. Storage Unit 14B, Riverside Lock and Safe. NG." Emily looked up, but the courier was already gone. She glanced toward her mother's room, then back at the key in her hand. Something in her gut told her that whatever waited in that storage unit would change everything, maybe even destroy what little peace they had left. Still, she grabbed her coat. As she stepped out into the rain again, the streetlights flickered like they were warning her to turn back. But she didn't, because for the first time, she wasn't just a waitress chasing a paycheck. She was a woman chasing the truth. And she didn't know it yet. But Nicholas Grant was already on his way to meet her there. The storage facility sat on the edge of the Hudson, half hidden behind a row of warehouses. The sky was a heavy grey, pressing low over the river like a warning. Emily's fingers tightened around the silver key as she stepped inside. A bored clerk behind the counter looked up. "Unit number?" 14B, she said quietly. He nodded, sliding a clipboard toward her. "Sign here. It's prepaid for a year." "By who?" He shrugged. "Doesn't say." The hall smelled like concrete and old dust. Rows of metal doors stretched endlessly in both directions, each one identical except for its small brass tag. Emily's footsteps echoed as she found 14B. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. She slid the key into the lock. The door creaked open. The unit was small, maybe 8 feet wide, with a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Dust motes danced in the pale glow. Against the back wall sat a wooden trunk, old, scuffed, the kind that belonged in a forgotten attic. Emily knelt down and lifted the lid. Inside were papers, photographs, and hospital files bound with rubber bands. She picked up the top folder. The first page bore a faded letterhead. Grant Memorial Hospital, 1998. Beneath it was a report. Incident record, fire in neonatal ward, March 14th, 1998. Her hands shook as she flipped the page. Attached was a photo of her mother, much younger, wearing scrubs, her eyes exhausted but kind. Below her name it read, Nurse, Ruth Hartman. Emily whispered, "Mom." A small cassette tape sat beneath the files, labeled in the same handwriting, for Nicholas. She found an old portable recorder in the trunk, inserted the tape and pressed play. For a few seconds, static hissed. Then her mother's voice, soft, trembling, filled the room. "Nicholas, if you ever hear this, it means the lie has finally caught up with me. You were never supposed to find out this way." Emily froze, her throat tightening. "I was there that night," the recording continued. "The fire wasn't an accident. Someone wanted the Grant twins gone. I tried to save them both, but one baby was already gone when I reached the nursery. At least, that's what I was told. The nurse in charge, Dr. Lowell, said there was no time. He handed me the surviving infant and told me to disappear, that it was the only way to keep the child safe." Emily's knees gave out. She sank to the floor, one hand over her mouth. "I raised her as my own," Ruth's voice broke. "I told her she was all I had left. I thought I was protecting her, but I never stopped wondering if the other baby had really died." The tape clicked to an end. Emily sat in silence, the words echoing inside her skull. She wasn't Ruth Hartman's daughter by blood. She was the other twin. A shadow suddenly stretched across the light. She looked up, and there he was. Nicholas Grant stood in the doorway, rain glistening on his shoulders, eyes wide as if he'd stepped into a dream. He looked down at the tape recorder, then at her tear-streaked face. "Where did you get that?" he asked, voice low and unsteady. Emily couldn't speak. She held up the tape with trembling fingers. "It's your mother's, and mine." Nicholas took a step closer, disbelief flooding his face. "What did it say?" Her voice broke. "That you weren't the only one who survived." The silence between them was heavy, electric. For the first time, Nicholas's composure cracked. His hand went to his mouth, his breath shallow. Dear God! And as the realization sank in, the weight of 24 lost years crushed them both to their knees. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The rain outside drummed against the metal roof, steady and merciless. The small storage unit felt like the eye of a storm, quiet, but ready to destroy everything around it. Nicholas stared at Emily, as if trying to piece together a puzzle that couldn't possibly be real. His voice was low, almost fragile. You're saying you're my sister? Emily's throat tightened. That's what the tape says. Your mother, my mother, Ruth, she thought one of us died. She didn't know the truth. He stepped closer, every muscle in his face tense. That can't be. My mother was told there was only one survivor. They said my twin brother was gone before the fire was even contained. She believed it too, Emily said, clutching the folder to her chest. But someone lied to both of you. Someone made sure we never found each other. Nicholas ran a trembling hand through his hair, pacing the narrow space. Why? What would anyone gain from separating two infants? I don't know, she whispered. Maybe something about your family. The Grants, your company. It's all connected somehow. He turned, his voice sharper now. You don't understand. The fire happened the same week my father died in a supposed accident. The board took control of everything. I grew up with nannies, lawyers, and silence. No one ever talked about that night. Emily blinked. So someone covered it up. Nicholas met her eyes. And whoever did, they're still out there. The same people who built this empire. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. Two strangers bound by blood and betrayal. Finally, Nicholas reached out and took the photograph from her trembling hand. The torn edge fit perfectly against the one he still carried in his wallet. When he held them together, the image was whole again. Two babies, side by side, their faces identical. Emily's eyes filled with tears. That's us, Nicholas swallowed hard. All this time, I thought I was alone. For the first time, his voice cracked. Emily's anger melted into something softer. Pity, maybe even understanding. But before either of them could speak again, a sound echoed down the hall. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Nicholas turned toward the door, his body instantly tense. You didn't tell anyone you were coming here, did you? She shook her head. No. The footsteps stopped right outside. A man's voice called out, deep and familiar. Mr. Grant, are you in there? It was Marcus. Nicholas frowned. How the hell did he... The door swung open, slamming against the wall. Marcus stepped inside, his expression unreadable. His eyes flicked from Nicholas to Emily to the open trunk on the floor. What is this? He demanded. You were supposed to let it go. Nicholas's voice was icy. You knew about her. Marcus hesitated, then sighed. I knew there were rumors, old records, things better left buried. You lied to me. Nicholas's voice rose, sharp and dangerous. I protected you, Marcus shot back. Everything you have, your company, your power, it all stays intact because the past stays dead. Emily stepped forward. You can't bury people's lives and call it protection. Marcus's gaze hardened. You have no idea what you're walking into, girl. The Grants are not saints. The moment this goes public, you'll both be destroyed. Nicholas squared his shoulders. Then let it destroy me, but not her. The air went still. Marcus's jaw clenched. Then he turned on his heel and stormed out. Nicholas looked at Emily, his expression torn between fury and fear. He knows too much. If Marcus is scared, that means we're close. Emily met his eyes. Close to what? He exhaled. The truth. And I think it's a lot darker than either of us imagined. Outside, thunder rolled again, louder this time, as if the sky itself knew what was coming. Nicholas didn't sleep that night. He stood by the tall window of his penthouse, staring down at the glittering city that now felt like a chessboard built on lies. The storm had passed, but the sky still carried its bruises, purple clouds, flashes of light in the distance. On the table behind him lay the hospital files Emily had found. He'd read them a dozen times, every word carving deeper into his chest. 2 infants, 1 fire, 1 missing nurse, and 1 truth that could burn everything he'd built. At 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message. "Meet me at dawn. The past isn't what you think. No name, no number. Just coordinates in the Upper East Side." He almost ignored it. Almost. But something told him the message wasn't random. By sunrise, he was there, an abandoned townhouse that once belonged to the old Grant family. Dust coated the furniture like snow. A single figure waited by the fireplace, a woman in her 60s, dressed in black, her posture elegant, unyielding. "Mrs. Waverley," Nicholas said quietly, "you worked for my parents." She nodded. "I was your mother's assistant before she retired. I was there the night of the fire." He stepped closer. "Then tell me the truth." Her eyes flicked toward the window, as if checking for watchers. "Your father didn't die by accident, Nicholas. The board forced him out. He was going to expose them for laundering money through the foundation. That fire at the hospital," she hesitated. "It wasn't meant for the infants. It was meant to destroy records linking the family to a medical experiment your father refused to fund." Nicholas froze. "A cover-up?" "Yes, but someone tampered with the plan. A guard saw the flames too late. The nursery was caught in it. Your father's car crash happened hours later." Nicholas felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Who did it?" Mrs. Waverley's gaze sharpened. "Ask your uncle, Leonard Grant." "My uncle died 5 years ago." She shook her head. "No, he disappeared. There's a difference." He opened his mouth, but a faint creak from the hallway silenced him. The front door slammed. The woman's eyes widened. "You shouldn't have come here. They're watching." Before Nicholas could react, she pressed a small envelope into his hand. "Your mother hid this for you. Don't trust Marcus. He's one of them." And then she was gone, vanishing through a back door like smoke. Nicholas stood there, pulse hammering, as tires screeched outside. Through the dusty curtains, he saw a black SUV pulling away. He didn't know if she'd escaped or been taken. Back in Queens, Emily sat by her mother's bedside. Ruth had grown weaker, her voice fading between coughs. "Mom," Emily whispered, "I know. About the fire. About me." Ruth's eyes opened slowly. "You found the tape?" Emily nodded. "Nicholas and we know the truth now. But there's more, isn't there?" Tears welled in her mother's eyes. "I tried to protect you. They wanted both babies gone. Your father, he was part of something he didn't understand." "Who?" Emily pressed. "Who wanted us dead?" Ruth's lips trembled. "Leonard Grant. He called himself your uncle. But he wasn't family, not in any way that mattered." Her breathing grew shallow, words slipping away. "Emily, promise me you'll stay away from the Grants. Promise." "Mom?" Emily leaned closer, but her mother had drifted into unconsciousness. The heart monitor beeped steadily, but each sound felt like a countdown. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, a new message from an unknown number. "They're coming for the tape. Leave now." Emily's blood ran cold. And across town, Nicholas tore open the envelope to find a single faded photo. His Uncle Leonard shaking hands with Marcus. The hospital lights flickered as Emily stuffed the cassette tape, the photo, and her phone into her backpack. Her heart thudded in her chest like a war drum. Every instinct screamed to run. She glanced at her mother's sleeping form one last time, tears stinging her eyes. "I'll come back for you," she whispered. "I promise." The hallway outside was eerily quiet, the kind of stillness that made every sound louder. Her sneakers squeaked against the tile as she slipped toward the exit. But when she turned the corner, 2 men in dark suits were waiting by the nurse's station. Their eyes locked on her immediately. "Miss Hartman," one said, too calm. "Mr. Grant sent us. You need to come with us." Every hair on her neck stood up. "Which Mr. Grant?" The taller man smiled faintly. "You know which one." Without another word, Emily bolted. The men shouted, giving chase down the corridor. Her lungs burned as she pushed through a side door and into the stairwell. The echo of heavy footsteps followed close behind. She flew down 3 flights, burst out into the parking lot, and sprinted into the rain. Taxi lights flashed across the street. She waved frantically. "Hey, please, stop!" The driver hesitated, then pulled over. She dove into the back seat, breathless. "Go! Just go!" He frowned. "Where to?" "Anywhere but here." He shrugged and drove off. Through the back window, Emily saw the 2 men emerge from the hospital doors, scanning the street. One of them spoke into an earpiece. Her phone buzzed. It was Nicholas. She hesitated before answering. "You have terrible timing," she said between breaths. "Where are you?" His voice was urgent, almost panicked. "Running from your people. They're not my people, Emily. Marcus sent them. He's trying to get to you before I can. You have to trust me." She gave a bitter laugh. "That's a big ask coming from the guy who humiliated me in front of a boardroom." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry. But right now, if Marcus gets that tape, he'll bury everything, including you." She stared out the rain-streaked window. "Then what do I do?" "Meet me," Nicholas said. "Safe house in Brooklyn. I'll send the address. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone." Before she could respond, the line cut. The cab driver glanced in the mirror. "You in some kind of trouble, lady?" "Yeah," she admitted softly. "The kind that doesn't go away." Meanwhile, across the city, Nicholas threw a duffel bag into the back of his car and slammed the door. The image of Marcus shaking hands with his uncle burned in his mind. He dialed a number. "Security, listen to me carefully," he said. "Lock down every file related to Grant Memorial 1998. If Marcus tries to access them, block him." "Yes, sir." Nicholas ended the call and gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He'd spent his life building walls around his company, around himself. But now those walls were cracking, and through them came a flood of lies, fire, and blood. Back in the cab, Emily checked her phone. No new messages. The driver took a sudden left turn down a narrow street. "Hey," she said, sitting up. "This isn't the bridge." "Shortcut," he muttered. Her gut twisted. She looked ahead and saw a black SUV parked across the intersection. The same one from the hospital. "Stop the car," she said. The driver didn't. Emily's hand went for the door handle. He glanced back, eyes cold. "Sorry, lady. It's just business." She shoved the door open and jumped into the rain as the cab screeched to a halt. Tires roared behind her, voices shouting. She ran into the alley, clutching the tape like it was her last piece of life. And as lightning tore across the sky, somewhere in Brooklyn, Nicholas was already on his way, straight into the trap waiting for them both. Brooklyn, after midnight, was a patchwork of neon and shadow. Rainwater pooled in the cracked pavement, reflecting the red glow of traffic lights. Emily kept to the side streets, her hood pulled low, her backpack clutched tight. Every sound, a siren, a passing car, made her flinch. Nicholas's message had led her to an old industrial district near the river. The safe house turned out to be an abandoned loft wedged between 2 warehouses. A faint light glowed behind one broken window on the 2nd floor. She hesitated at the door. What if this is another trick? But she had nowhere else to go. Her mother was in the hospital. Her apartment was compromised. The tape in her bag felt like the only piece of truth she still owned. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The inside smelled of rust and damp wood. A single hanging bulb flickered over a dusty table stacked with files. Nicholas was there, leaning over them, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his expression tight. When he saw her, relief flashed across his face. "You made it?" "Barely," she said, closing the door behind her. "Someone tried to grab me at the hospital. I think Marcus sent them." Nicholas nodded grimly. He's been cleaning house. Anyone who knew about the fire, about my father, they've either vanished or been paid off. He's not just covering tracks. He's erasing history." Emily dropped her bag on the table. "Then we stop him." He looked at her, surprised. "You're not scared?" "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm done running from a story that's supposed to be mine." Nicholas gave a faint, almost broken smile. "You sound like him." "Who?" "My father," he said quietly. "He used to say the same thing before the board shut him out. He thought integrity could fix anything." Emily's eyes softened. "Maybe it still can." For a moment, the tension between them cracked, replaced by something raw and human. Then a crash echoed outside. Metal against metal. Nicholas froze. "Get down!" They ducked behind the table just as the front door burst open. A figure stepped through the doorway, flashlight cutting through the dark. "Marcus!" Nicholas hissed. The assistant's voice was smooth, too calm. "You really should have listened to me, Nicholas. Some truths aren't meant to survive." He moved deeper into the room, gun glinting in his hand. "Give me the tape." Emily's pulse roared in her ears. "You'll have to kill me first." Marcus smiled faintly. "That can be arranged." Nicholas rose slowly, hands raised. "You don't want to do this. My father trusted you. I trusted you." "That's what makes this so tragic," Marcus said. "Leonard gave me a choice, power or loyalty. I chose the only thing that lasts." He turned the gun toward Emily. Nicholas moved instantly, knocking the table over. Papers flew everywhere. The gun went off, loud, deafening. Emily crawled toward the back door as Nicholas tackled Marcus to the ground. The two men fought, the gun skidding across the floor. Nicholas landed a punch, then another, until Marcus caught him in the ribs with his knee and shoved him off. Emily's fingers brushed the gun. She grabbed it, hands shaking, and aimed. "Stop!" Marcus froze, breathing hard. Nicholas, bleeding from the lip, met her eyes. "Emily, don't." But Marcus only laughed. "You think you can stop all this with one bullet? The world belongs to men who decide what truth even is." Emily's voice trembled, but steady enough to say, "Then maybe it's time someone else decides." The gunshot cracked through the night, echoing across the river. Marcus staggered back, shock flashing across his face before he collapsed. Silence. Only the rain, soft again, like the city exhaled. Nicholas looked at Emily, wide-eyed, pale, shaking. "You saved my life," he whispered. "No," she said, lowering the gun, tears mixing with rain. "I just stopped another lie." And outside, through the mist, blue and red lights began to flash. Too soon, too perfectly timed. Someone else already knew what had happened. The flashing lights painted the brick walls blue and red, pulsing like a heartbeat. Nicholas and Emily froze, still breathing hard, the gun heavy in her trembling hand. The sirens grew louder, closer. Nicholas moved first. "We need to get out of here, now!" Emily stared at Marcus's body, sprawled across the concrete floor, the spreading pool of red. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted him to stop." He stepped forward and gently took the gun from her. "I know, but if the police find us here, they won't believe that." He grabbed the hospital files from the table and shoved them into a bag. "Come on." They slipped out the back door just as the first squad car screeched to a stop out front. Shouts echoed in the alley behind them, beams of flashlights cutting through the rain. Nicholas pulled Emily into a side passage. The two of them pressed against cold metal until the voices passed. When they finally reached his car, parked several blocks away, Emily was shaking so badly she could barely stand. "Get in," he said. She climbed into the passenger seat. The city blurred by as they sped toward the bridge. The windshield wipers struggled against the downpour. After several miles, she found her voice. "They'll think we killed him." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "We didn't, but the truth won't matter once the board gets hold of this. Marcus wasn't acting alone." Emily turned toward him. "You think your uncle is still alive?" "I don't think." he said grimly. I know. They drove in silence until the city skyline shrank in the distance. Finally, Nicholas pulled into a deserted overlook above the river. The rain had softened to a mist. He killed the engine, his hands still gripping the wheel. Emily, he said quietly, what you did tonight, it's going to follow you. They'll twist it. Use it to discredit both of us. She stared out the window. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to know who I was. He looked at her, his voice softer now. You're my sister. That's who you are. Something in her broke. The tears came hot and sudden. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that. Nicholas reached across and took her hand. We'll fix this. We'll clear your name and end what they started. She squeezed his hand back, but her eyes flicked toward the horizon. You can't fix everything, Nick. Some of it's too broken. Before he could answer, headlights appeared in the rear-view mirror. 2 black SUVs pulling up behind them. Nicholas swore under his breath. They found us. Emily turned, fear flashing across her face. How? Marcus must have had a tracker on my car. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small black drive. Here. This has everything. Records, payments, names. The whole conspiracy. If they catch us, make sure someone sees it. What are you going to do? She whispered. Buy you time. Before she could argue, he stepped out of the car, rain immediately soaking his shirt. He walked straight toward the approaching SUVs, his hands raised. Stay in the car, he shouted back. The doors of the first SUV opened. Men in suits poured out, guns drawn. Mr. Grant, one called. You need to come with us. Nicholas didn't move. Where's Leonard? No one answered. Emily gripped the USB drive, her heart hammering. Through the rain-streaked windshield, she saw one of the men lift his weapon. Nick! She screamed. A single gunshot split the night. She slammed her hand over her mouth, the sound still echoing in her head. And then, silence. In that hollow, endless quiet, Emily realized the truth. Her brother had just traded his life to protect hers. The shot echoed across the river, sharp and final. Emily froze in the passenger seat, her breath caught in her throat. For one awful moment, everything was still. The rain, the runs, the hum of the city. Then her body moved before her mind could catch up. She threw the door open and ran. Nicholas! He was on the ground near the front of the car, blood spreading across his shoulder. The men in black surrounded him, their weapons still raised. Don't move, one of them shouted. Emily dropped to her knees beside Nicholas, ignoring them. You're okay, she said frantically, pressing her hands against the wound. Warm blood slicked her fingers. His eyes fluttered open. Emily, listen to me. No, save your strength. He shook his head weakly. The drive. Don't let them take it. Promise me. Tears blurred her vision. You're not dying. You can tell me yourself. He gave a faint smile. You sound just like Mom. The men closed in. One of them grabbed her arm. Step back, miss. She shoved him off, rage blazing through the fear. He needs a hospital. The man's expression didn't change. He'll get one. 2 others lifted Nicholas, dragging him toward the SUV. He didn't resist, but his eyes stayed locked on hers, pleading, commanding. Run. She understood. Emily turned and bolted into the darkness. Behind her, someone shouted, Stop her! Gunfire tore through the rain as she darted between the trees. Her lungs burned, her wet clothes clinging to her skin. She clutched the USB drive in her pocket like a lifeline. When she reached the embankment, she saw the river below. Cold, black, and fast. Voices echoed behind her. Flashlights cut through the trees. There was no time to think. She jumped. The water hit like a wall, icy and violent. It dragged her under, spinning her through the current. For a second, she couldn't tell up from down. Then instinct kicked in. She kicked hard, fighting her way to the surface, gasping for air. She swam until her arms screamed, finally pulling herself onto the muddy shore on the opposite bank. She lay there for a long moment, coughing, shivering, staring up at the storm clouds overhead. When she finally stood, her knees trembled, but she was alive. Barely. Her phone was gone, swept away by the current. Her brother was gone, taken. And somewhere out there, Leonard Grant was still pulling the strings. Emily staggered toward the distant lights of the city. Every step hurt, but every step meant she was still fighting. By dawn, she reached an all-night diner on the edge of Brooklyn. The waitress behind the counter stared as Emily stumbled in, soaked and shaking. "Sweetheart, you need help," the woman said softly. "I need a computer," Emily rasped. The waitress hesitated, then pointed to a dusty laptop used for orders. "Knock yourself out." Emily plugged in the USB drive. Folders opened. Transactions, offshore accounts, hospital records, everything. Proof that the Grant empire had been built on fraud, theft, and silence. Her hands shook as she copied the data. Nicholas's voice echoed in her mind. "Don't let them take it." A headline flashed across the diner's muted TV. "Billionaire Nicholas Grant wounded in alleged attack, condition unknown." Emily's heart clenched. She touched the screen, whispering, "Hold on, Nick." The waitress set a cup of coffee in front of her. "You running from somebody, honey?" Emily stared out the window. "No," she said quietly. "I'm running toward something." Outside, the first light of morning spilled over the wet streets, and for the first time since the fire 24 years ago, the truth had a heartbeat. And her name was Emily Hartman. By mid-morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and gleaming under a pale grey sun. Emily sat in a corner booth of the diner, her wet hair pulled back, the USB drive plugged into the old laptop. Each file she opened made her stomach twist tighter. It was all there. Contracts, bank transfers, falsified medical reports, documents linking the Grant Foundation to illegal trials at Grant Memorial Hospital, experiments on premature infants. She whispered, "Oh my God, this is what they were hiding." Her eyes skimmed through line after line. Her father, Arthur Grant, had discovered the scheme and planned to expose it. That was why he'd been killed. The fire wasn't an accident. It was cleanup. And Leonard, his brother, had taken everything. Emily saved copies to an online drive. Then she typed an email to every major news outlet she could think of, attaching the files with one line. "The truth about the Grants begins here." Before hitting send, she hesitated. Once she did this, there would be no turning back. She closed her eyes and pressed the key. It was done. The bell above the diner door jingled. Emily's head snapped up. A man in a trench coat walked in, scanning the room. He wasn't a customer. His eyes were searching. "Damn," she muttered. She yanked the USB from the laptop, stuffed it into her pocket, and slipped out the back exit. The cold air hit her like a slap. She ran down the alley, sneakers splashing through puddles. The man followed. Emily turned a corner and nearly collided with someone. Broad shoulders, blood-stained sleeve. "Nick?" Nicholas stood there, pale but alive, a bandage visible beneath his jacket. How?" He caught her before she could fall. "I told you I'd buy you time, not leave you alone." Her hands shook as she touched his face. "They shot you." "Not well enough," he said dryly. "Where's the drive?" She pressed it into his palm. "It's already out there. The media has everything." Nicholas looked at her, a mixture of pride and fear. "You just lit a fuse that's going to blow this city apart." "Good," she said. "Let it burn." He managed a small smile, but it didn't last. Tires screeched nearby. Black cars turned into the alley, headlights glaring. "Run," he said. They sprinted through the maze of streets, ducking between delivery trucks. A gunshot cracked, glass shattered. Emily flinched but kept going. They burst through a fence into an abandoned subway entrance and stumbled down the stairs. In the dark tunnel, they caught their breath. The only light came from Nicholas's phone. He winced, pressing his shoulder. Emily tore a strip from her sleeve and wrapped it around his arm. "You're bleeding again," she said. "I'll live," he replied, then looked at her. "You shouldn't have come back for me. I wasn't about to let the only family I have left die alone." Something flickered in his eyes. Gratitude, love, maybe both. Before either could speak, his phone vibrated. A message appeared from an unknown number. "Too late. Check the news." He opened it. The screen showed breaking headlines. Grant Foundation denies allegations. Calls leaked files fabricated. Emily's stomach dropped. "They're already spinning it?" Nicholas scrolled further, his expression darkening. "Leonard's alive. He's on camera, calling you a con artist who tried to blackmail me." Her voice broke. "They're turning it all on us." He took her hand, firm and steady. "Then we make them listen. We find proof they can't erase." "And where do we find that?" she asked. Nicholas met her gaze. "In the one place no one's looked in 24 years, the ruins of Grant Memorial." The silence stretched, heavy and electric. Emily nodded once. "Then we go back to where it started." And somewhere deep in the city, a shadowed figure turned off a TV and whispered, "Let them try." Night fell by the time they reached the old hospital. Grant Memorial had been shut down for years, its walls blackened and cracked, its name half torn from the stone archway. The city had forgotten it, but the ghosts hadn't. Nicholas parked his car a block away. The street was silent except for the wind moving through broken windows. Emily stared at the dark silhouette of the building and whispered, "This is where it all happened." He nodded. "This is where we were born, and where everything burned." They slipped through a gap in the fence, flashlights cutting thin beams through the dust. Inside, the air was thick with decay and old smoke. Every sound, the crunch of glass, the creak of metal, felt too loud. Nicholas moved ahead, steady despite his bandaged shoulder. According to the blueprints, the nursery wing was in the east corridor. If Leonard wanted to hide something, it'd be there. Emily followed, her nerves stretched thin. "You think we'll find proof after 24 years? If it was worth killing for," he said. "It's worth hiding forever." They reached a corridor lined with warped doors. Faded murals of cartoon animals still clung to the walls. Emily brushed dust from a sign. "Neonatal ward." Her voice trembled. "This is it." Nicholas tried the door. It stuck, swollen from years of neglect. He kicked it once, and it gave way with a sharp crack. The room beyond was gutted, melted equipment, rusted cribs, black soot crawling up the walls. The air smelled faintly of burned chemicals. Emily lifted her flashlight, tracing the outlines of something on the floor. "Nick," she whispered. "Look." Under layers of ash was a metal hatch, small, square, almost invisible. Nicholas knelt beside it and wiped away the grime. There was an engraving barely visible under the light. "Archive Storage A." He smiled grimly. "Hospitals don't burn their archives. They bury them." With effort, he pried the hatch open. A rush of stale air escaped. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. Emily hesitated. "This feels wrong." He looked at her. "So did everything they ever told us." They descended into the basement, the temperature dropping with each step. Their flashlights caught rows of old filing cabinets, water-stained boxes, and machines covered with tarps. Emily approached a file cabinet marked 1998, Research Division. She pulled a drawer open, and her flashlight beam fell across rows of patient charts. She froze. "Nick, these aren't babies. They're test subjects." Nicholas scanned one page. His face went pale. "Experimental serum trials. They were testing on premature infants, trying to develop a genetic immunity formula." Emily's stomach turned. "Our father found out, didn't he?" He nodded slowly. "And Leonard killed him to keep it quiet." Before they could process the words, a sharp sound echoed behind them, a boot scuff. They spun around. A beam of light hit their faces. "Step away from the files," a voice commanded. Leonard Grant stood at the base of the stairs, flanked by 2 armed men. Time had not softened him. His hair was grey now, but his eyes were pure steel. Nicholas's voice was low and full of venom. "You should have stayed dead." Leonard smiled faintly. "You always were too much like your father. Idealistic. Weak." Emily stepped forward. "You murdered him. You burned this place to hide your crimes." Leonard raised a hand. "No, my dear. I saved this family. Everything you've ever had came from me cleaning up that man's mess." Nicholas took a step toward him. "You call this saving? You stole our lives." Leonard's smile vanished. "And I can take them back just as easily." The gunmen lifted their weapons. Emily's fingers brushed the phone in her pocket. The recording app was running, the red light blinking. Leonard didn't notice. For the first time, the truth was being captured, not hidden, and it was about to bring the entire Grant empire to its knees. Leonard's voice filled the basement, smooth and cold like oil. "You think the world will care about 2 lost children? About old files and ghosts? I built this empire. People need power, not truth." Nicholas's flashlight trembled slightly in his hand. "You built it on blood. Ours, our father's, every innocent child in those reports." Leonard gave a short laugh. "Idealism doesn't pay dividends. Your father never understood that, and it killed him. Don't make the same mistake." Emily stepped forward. "You're the mistake, Leonard, and it ends tonight." Leonard sighed as if bored. "Do you really think this story will matter? The world forgives the rich, Miss Hartman. They always do." He nodded toward his guards. "End this!" Before the gunmen could move, Nicholas grabbed a rusted metal tray from a nearby table and swung it hard. The first guard dropped instantly. Emily ducked behind a cabinet as bullets tore through old paper and plaster. Sparks lit the room as they ricocheted off metal. Nicholas tackled the second guard, forcing his weapon away. The struggle sent them crashing into a stack of filing cabinets that toppled like dominoes. Dust and smoke filled the air. Emily reached for a fallen gun, hands shaking. She aimed it at Leonard. "Call them off!" Leonard didn't flinch. "You won't shoot me. Try me." He smiled faintly, stepping closer. "You think ending me fixes anything? You expose this, and the board will bury it under another lie. You'll lose everything. Your names, your lives, your mother's memory. Is that really worth it?" Emily's grip tightened. She died keeping this secret. "I won't." A flicker of something, fear, maybe regret, crossed Leonard's face, but it vanished quickly. He nodded to the fallen guard's radio. "They're already on their way. You're out of time." Nicholas snatched a lighter from his pocket, one he'd carried for years without ever using. "Then we make our own ending." Leonard frowned. "What are you doing?" Nicholas tossed the lighter into a trail of spilled fuel from an overturned generator. The flame caught instantly, racing across the floor like a living thing. "Nick!" Emily shouted. He grabbed her wrist. "Run!" Fire spread fast, feeding on years of dust and chemicals. The air grew thick, acrid. Leonard's shouts vanished behind the roar of the flames. They ran through the smoke-filled corridors, the building groaning around them. Emily coughed violently, vision blurring. "This whole place is going to collapse." "That's the idea," Nicholas yelled. "If we can't erase his crimes, we bury them with him." They reached the stairwell just as part of the ceiling gave way. Debris crashed between them. Nicholas pushed her forward. "Go!" "No, not without you." He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "You have the recording. You have everything. Get it out there." Tears streamed down her soot-covered face. "Nick, go!" The stairwell cracked, fire licking at the edges. She turned and climbed, her lungs screaming for air. Behind her, she heard the building groan again. A deep, terrible sound. She burst through the main doors into the night, stumbling onto the grass as the hospital behind her erupted in a thunderous explosion. The blast knocked her to the ground. Flames lit the sky, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. She turned back, screaming his name. "Nicholas!" No answer. Just fire, devouring the ghosts of the past. Her phone slipped from her pocket, the red recording light still blinking. She picked it up, staring at the screen. Leonard's voice, his confession, his arrogance, his guilt, was all there. Her hands shook as she whispered, "You didn't die for nothing." And as the flames consumed the ruins, Emily walked away, carrying the only weapon the powerful couldn't silence: the truth. By dawn, the fire at Grant Memorial was the biggest story in New York. News choppers hovered over the ruins, smoke curling into the pink sky. Reporters spoke of explosions, corruption, conspiracy. No one had the full story, but everyone wanted it. Emily watched from a motel room miles away, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled faintly of smoke. Her face was pale, her eyes red. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flames swallowing her brother. The TV anchor's voice broke through her thoughts. Authorities confirm 2 bodies have yet to be identified. The fire appears connected to the ongoing investigation into the Grant Foundation scandal. Emily clenched her fists. 2 bodies, she whispered. "Nick, you better not be one of them." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her pulse quickened as she answered. "Hello?" A familiar voice, hoarse but alive, came through. "You really think I'd go down that easy?" She gasped. "Nick?" "Barely standing," he said with a tired laugh. "But alive. I got out through the north wing before it blew." Tears flooded her eyes. I thought you were gone." "Not yet. But Leonard is." His tone darkened. "He didn't make it out. Maybe that's justice. Maybe it's just physics. Either way, it's over." Emily sank onto the bed, relief crashing over her like a wave. "It's not over," she said quietly. "We have his confession. The whole world's going to hear it." "Already?" She nodded, glancing at her laptop. "I uploaded the recording to every major outlet I could find, and social media's on fire. Everyone's talking about it." Nicholas exhaled. "Then it's finally happening." "It's happening," she confirmed. "They can't bury it this time." An hour later, every news network in the country carried the same headline: "The Grant Empire Exposed." Clips from the recording played on repeat. Leonard's own voice admitting to the hospital experiments, the fire, the murders. His arrogance became his undoing. Reporters stood outside Grant International headquarters as employees fled the building. Government agents carried out boxes of files. The board resigned within hours. Emily sat enshrined, watching it all unfold. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. She felt powerful and terrified by it. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video call. Nicholas's face appeared, bandaged but smiling faintly. "Hey, hero," he said. "You look like hell," she replied, smiling through her tears. "Feels worse. But seeing that headline makes it worth it." She hesitated. "What now?" "The foundation's gone. The money's frozen. The family name's ruined." He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "Then we start over, with what's left of the truth." Emily nodded slowly. "And with what's left of us." They both fell silent, the weight of everything settling between them. The loss, the fire, the decades of lies finally burned away. "Emily," he said quietly, "Dad would have been proud of you." Her throat tightened. "He'd be proud of you too. You saved me." "No," he said with a small smile. "You saved both of us." A knock sounded on her motel door. She turned. "Nick, someone's here." "Careful," he warned. She opened the door slowly. 2 federal agents stood outside, badges raised. "Miss Hartman," one asked, "we need to take your statement. You're now the primary witness in the Grant investigation." Emily nodded, glancing back at the laptop screen. "Tell my brother I'll see him soon." The agents exchanged a look. Brother? She smiled faintly. Yeah, the one they said died 24 years ago. As they led her out into the morning light, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Miss Hartman, is it true you're a Grant heir? She met their gaze squarely. No, I'm not an heir. I'm a survivor. And as her words spread across every screen, Emily knew the empire that once silenced her family had finally been forced to listen. 2 weeks later, the world looked different. The Grant name was no longer a symbol of power, but a synonym for scandal. Stock prices collapsed, lawsuits piled up, and government officials tripped over each other to distance themselves from the dynasty that had once owned them. Emily watched the chaos unfold from the back seat of a black sedan, driven by federal security. She had testified before the grand jury that morning, recounting every detail, from the photo, the tape, the fire, to Leonard's final confession. Each word felt like tearing open an old wound, but she didn't flinch. The agent driving glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You did good in there, Miss Hartman. Not many people could stand up to that kind of pressure. Emily offered a faint smile. Pressure's easier than guilt. He nodded, saying nothing more. The car pulled up to the temporary safe house in upstate New York. The property overlooked a quiet lake, a world away from sirens and skyscrapers. Nicholas was waiting on the porch, leaning against the railing, his arm still in a sling, but his eyes clear. When she stepped out, he grinned. I told you they couldn't keep you locked up forever. She walked up the steps and hugged him. You look better. Doctors say I'm too stubborn to die. He smirked. Guess it runs in the family. They sat together on the porch, watching the sunlight glint off the water. For the first time, there was silence. Not the heavy kind, but the kind that heals. Nicholas handed her a folded newspaper. The headline read, Grant twins reunited. Corruption exposed. Justice served. Beneath it was a photo of the two of them, taken the day she testified. Emily stared at it for a long moment. Feels strange, seeing it written like that. He chuckled. You get used to it. Eventually they'll stop calling us the Grant twins and just call us people again. She sighed. I'm not sure I'll ever be just a person again. Nicholas turned toward her. You're not. You're the one who brought down the most powerful family in the country. That doesn't just make you a person, Emily. It makes you history. She laughed softly. I didn't do it for history. I know, he said gently. You did it for Mom. Her throat tightened. She'd be proud of us. He nodded, eyes distant. Yeah, I think she finally gets to rest now. For a while, they said nothing. The world beyond the lake could burn or rebuild. It didn't matter. Here, they were just brother and sister, trying to remember what peace felt like. Then Nicholas's phone buzzed. He frowned, reading the message. Emily noticed his change in expression. What is it? He turned the screen toward her. It was an email, unsigned, untraceable, containing a single line. The Grant files weren't the only ones. Look deeper. Attached was a list of hospital names, hundreds of them. Across the country. Her stomach sank. You mean the experiments didn't stop with us? Nicholas finished grimly. Leonard wasn't the mastermind. He was just the keeper. Emily stared at the horizon. So it's not over. He met her gaze. No, it's just beginning. She took a deep breath, the lake breeze cool against her skin. Then we keep going. Together. Nicholas smiled, but there was no joy in it, only resolve. Together. They sat side by side as the sun dipped low, the world quiet except for the wind in the trees. Somewhere out there, the system that created the Grants was still alive, hiding behind new names and fresh lies. But for the first time, it wasn't untouchable. Because now the people it tried to erase had found their voices, and they weren't done speaking. The lake was still that night, moonlight stretching across the water like a ribbon of silver. Emily couldn't sleep. The message Nicholas had shown her kept replaying in her head. The Grant files weren't the only ones. She stepped onto the porch, pulling his jacket tighter around her. The world was quiet, but her thoughts weren't. She had spent months fighting to uncover one lie, only to realize there were hundreds more buried beneath it. Behind her, the screen door creaked. Nicholas limped out, still wearing his sling. "You're awake too," he said softly. She nodded. "Can't stop thinking about it. How many families like ours never found out what was done to them?" Nicholas leaned on the railing beside her. "Too many, but we can't fight them all." She looked at him, her voice steady. "Then we fight what we can?" He smiled faintly. "That's what scares me about you, Emily. You don't know when to stop." She shrugged. "Guess that runs in the family." For a few minutes, they just stood there, listening to the wind move through the trees. The air smelled of pine and rain. Finally, Nicholas spoke again. "There's something you should see." He pulled a folder from his coat pocket and handed it to her. Inside were printed copies of the new list: hospital names, research facilities, offshore accounts. "I had a friend in the bureau trace some of the funding. It doesn't stop with Leonard. There's a network, a foundation buried under shell companies." Emily's eyes scanned the papers. "And they're still active?" "Very," he said. "The same kind of research that started with us. Only now, it's global." She closed the folder, her jaw set. "We can't let it keep happening." Nicholas exhaled. "You realize what you're saying. Going after them means stepping back into hell. These aren't businessmen. They're predators with governments on their payroll." "I don't care," she said. "I won't let their lies destroy more lives. Not again." He studied her for a long moment before finally nodding. "Then we'll need help. People who believe in something bigger than fear." Emily smirked. "You sound like Dad." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Let's hope I don't end up like him." She looked at him, her expression softening. "You won't. You've got me watching your back." He chuckled. "That's what I'm afraid of." The sound of tires crunching on gravel made them both turn. Headlights cut across the trees as a dark sedan approached the house. Emily's pulse jumped. "You expecting someone?" Nicholas shook his head. "Stay behind me." The car stopped a few feet from the porch. A woman stepped out, tall, wearing a long coat and a badge clipped to her lapel. "Mr. Grant, Miss Hartman," she called calmly. "I'm Special Agent Morgan, Department of Justice. We need to talk." Nicholas didn't lower his guard. "You here to arrest us?" "No," she said. "To recruit you." Emily frowned. "Recruit?" Morgan held up a sealed envelope. "We've been following your case. What you exposed wasn't just corporate crime. It was part of a much larger operation. We could use your help to finish what your father started." Nicholas glanced at Emily. "You believe her?" Emily studied the agent's face. Measured, calm, not a trace of arrogance. "I think she's telling the truth." Morgan stepped closer, her voice low. "If you want to bring them down, you'll need more than proof. You'll need allies." The siblings exchanged a look, something unspoken passing between them. Fear, purpose, maybe both. Nicholas finally nodded. "Then tell us where to start." The agent smiled slightly. "Pack light." As the car doors opened and the engine hummed, Emily looked back at the quiet lake one last time. The reflection of the moon rippled across the surface, broken but still shining. Because some wars didn't end with fire, they began with it. The black sedan sliced through the pre-dawn fog, like a shadow on a mission. Emily sat in the back seat beside Nicholas, both silent as the road wound deeper into the mountains. Agent Morgan drove, her eyes fixed ahead, calm but unreadable. After an hour, Emily finally broke the silence. "Where exactly are we going?" Morgan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "A secure site, off-grid. The government calls it a task force, but think of it as a cleanup crew for the mess your family left behind." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "You mean the network Leonard helped build?" Morgan nodded. "Exactly. You exposed the tip of it. Now we dismantle the rest." Emily leaned back, staring out the window as the sun broke over the horizon. gold light spilled across the forest, and for a moment, she almost forgot the weight of everything. Almost. She turned to her brother. "You ever think about what happens after this? When it's finally over?" He smiled faintly. "I don't think it'll ever be over. But maybe we'll be able to breathe again." The car turned down a gravel path, leading to a facility hidden among the trees. From the outside, it looked like an old research compound, half forgotten. Inside, though, it buzzed with quiet activity. Agents, analysts, walls covered in maps and photos. Morgan led them into a briefing room. On the screen at the front was a web of connections, names, corporations, government agencies, all tied together by one word in bold letters: Project Seraph. Nicholas frowned. "What is that?" Morgan looked at them both. "The continuation of the experiments your father tried to stop. After Grant Memorial burned, the board moved the project offshore. They've been operating under different names ever since." Emily stepped closer to the screen, eyes scanning the faces and documents. "All of this, babies, families, lives. They treated them like data." Morgan's expression softened. "Your father wasn't the only one who tried to stop them. He had allies. They've been waiting for someone to finish what he started." Nicholas crossed his arms. "And you think we're those people?" "I don't think," Morgan said. "I know." Emily turned to her brother. "If we walk away now, we're just like Leonard. Pretending silence is safety." He exhaled, a slow, heavy breath. "Then I guess we don't walk away." Morgan handed them each a folder. "Good. You'll both need new identities. The media thinks you've gone into witness protection. We're going to use that." Emily flipped open her file. The name on the first page made her smile faintly. E. Monroe, her mother's maiden name. "You've got a sense of irony," she said. Morgan smiled. "Call it poetic justice." Nicholas glanced at his. "Nathan Shaw," he read aloud. "Guess I finally get a second chance at being someone else." Morgan looked between them. "You won't have to do this alone, but you do have to decide. Once you go down this road, there's no normal life waiting at the end." Emily met her brother's eyes. "We lost normal a long time ago." He nodded. "Let's finish it." Morgan turned off the lights. The screen behind her shifted to a map, red dots glowing across continents. "This," she said, pointing, "is the world as it really is. Every red dot is a facility connected to Seraph, and every one of them will fall." Emily felt something stir inside her. Not fear, not grief, but purpose, the kind that burned clean. She looked at Nicholas, then back at the glowing map. "Let's make sure they never forget who we are." He smiled. "The Grants?" She shook her head. "The ones who survived them." Outside, the first full light of morning broke through the clouds, cutting across the valley like a promise. Because some stories don't end in ashes, they rise from them. So that's how our story ends. Or maybe how it begins again. You're still here, aren't you? If you've made it this far, something in this story must have touched you. The pain, the loss, the strength to rise again. What Emily and Nicholas went through wasn't just about family or truth. It was about resilience, the quiet power of standing up when the world wants you silent. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the heart of it. Every fire that tried to destroy them became the very thing that set them free. And maybe that's true for you too. Whatever has broken you, whatever's been taken, there's still a part of you that refuses to give up. That part is sacred. So take a breath, let the ashes fall where they may, and when you're ready, stand up. Because healing isn't about forgetting the pain, it's about walking through it and choosing to live anyway. If this story spoke to your heart, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Together, we'll keep finding light in the dark.